Maria Jennings was born on a Tuesday morning in the back room of a government-funded clinic in the heart of Detroit. Her first crib was a cracked laundry basket lined with old towels, and her lullabies were the distant sounds of police sirens and neighbors arguing through thin walls. From the start, the world didn't expect much from her. It never gave her a chance to be anything other than invisible. Her mother, Denise, battled addiction for most of Maria's childhood, swinging between brief moments of love and long stretches of absence. Her father, Darryl, had been locked up since she was 2. She didn't remember his face, just a faded photo tucked behind a roach-scarred kitchen magnet. People whispered that he ran with gangs, boosted cars, maybe worse. Nobody said it to Maria directly. They just looked at her like the next link in a broken chain dot. By the time she reached elementary school, teachers had already stopped expecting her to try. She sat in the back, silent, eyes down, never causing trouble, but never being called on either. No one asked if she was okay when she came to school hungry, or wore the same hoodie for 6 days straight. Maria Jennings? The substitute would ask during roll call. A pause, a shrug. Guess she's absent. Even when she wasn't. But Maria noticed everything. While other kids were doodling hearts and initials, Maria was sketching maps, intricate blueprints of imaginary cities, each district connected by colored lines and pathways only she understood. When she found a discarded book on cryptography in a donation bin at the library, her world shifted. She stayed up late copying patterns, inventing puzzles, and filling dollar store notebooks with secrets no one else could crack. She had no laptop, no internet, no tutor. Just paper, a pencil, an instinct. The streets taught her how to move quietly, how to read faces, how to listen before speaking. The library taught her code, binary, ciphers, logic puzzles. One librarian, Mr. Stein, once caught her sneaking in after hours to charge a broken phone. He didn't scold her. He gave her access to the library's database and whispered, "Keep learning, kid. Someday, someone's gonna need that brain." She never forgot that. By age 15, Maria could spot weaknesses in online platforms' loopholes. In public databases, ways to mask IP addresses. She didn't use it for crime. It was never about stealing or hacking banks. For her, it was a gamey language only she spoke. Her life was chaotic, unstable, unfair. But code? Code was fair. Either the logic worked or it didn't. And Maria made it work. Still, nobody saw her. Social workers cycled in and out of her life. Teachers marked her present without ever saying her name. Classmates mocked her for being quiet, poor, weird. She heard it whispered, "She's worthless. She's got nothing. She won't make it past 20. And honestly, some days, she believed it. Until one night, when she found herself staring up at the cracked ceiling of a shelter bed, notebook on her chest, and realized something. No one was coming to save her. No fairy godmother, no social worker, no miracle scholarship. Just her mind, and the codes. So she made a decision. She would become the kind of person no one saw coming. The kind who moved in silence, who turned pain into purpose, who built her future from nothing. The kind who made enemies whisper her name in fear. They said she was worthless, that she would vanish, fade away. But Maria Jennings was never going to disappear. She was going to become a ghost in the machine. And one day, the same world that looked through her would have no choice but to look up and ask, "Who is she?" And by then, it would already be too late. At 17, Maria Jennings stood at the recruitment desk of a U.S. Army office in downtown Detroit with nothing but a wrinkled school ID and a burning need to get out. The sergeant barely glanced at her paperwork before shaking his head. "Your record's a mess. GPA's too low. Juvenile history doesn't help," he said without lifting his eyes. Come back when you've cleaned yourself up. Maria didn't argue. She just nodded, left, and walked 2 miles back to the halfway shelter she was living in that week. She had no home address, no phone, and no one to vouch for her. The government didn't want her. Neither did the schools, colleges, or low-tier job agencies. She didn't have the grades, the references, or the charm. She was a ghost in broad daylight. The kind people looked past on the subway. The kind cashiers assumed was stealing. The kind security followed around. But Maria didn't beg for attention. She was used to being overlooked. If anything, she began to treat it like a gift. The city saw her as background noise. That meant no one noticed when she taught herself how to slip past library firewall restrictions, how to disguise her digital footprints, or how to spoof government. Forms just to access archived cybersecurity white papers. She read everything about the Stuxnet worm, the SolarWinds attack, and how small flaws in big systems brought nations to their knees. She didn't know it yet, but she was training for war. Still, survival came first. Maria cleaned gas station, bathrooms by day, and stocked groceries overnight. Her shoulders ached, her knuckles stayed cracked, and she wore shoes with duct tape on the toes. She got used to pretending she was okay. Got used to being called honey or sweetheart by strangers who didn't care to learn her name out at night. She plugged into borrowed library computers and searched message boards filled with anonymous code enthusiast engineers, hobbyists, hackers. She posted solutions to puzzles no one asked her to solve, left clues in string theory problems, cracked passwords left unsolved for months. She earned no money, no recognition, just silence. Until one user messaged her anonymously. "You shouldn't be able to solve that," Maria replied. "But I did." That was the moment things started to shift. She wasn't sure who the message came from. Maybe it was one of the site moderators. Maybe it was a government analyst playing it safe. Maybe it was someone like her, curious, lonely, watching. But something changed. Suddenly her inbox was filled with encrypted riddles. Hidden strings inside code. A subtle invitation. Then came the real test. An online competition appeared for just 48 hours. No announcement. No branding. Just decrypt, disarm, survive. Maria barely slept. She worked through every logic gate, trapdoor, and false lead until her vision blurred. On the final screen, a message appeared. "You see what others don't. We see you." 2 days later, a man in a gray coat handed her a sealed envelope as she exited the library. "Jennings?" he asked. No one had called her that in months. She nodded. "Consider this." "A door," he said, vanishing before she could speak. Inside the envelope was a number. No name, no address. Just a time and a location for a meeting. She hesitated for days. Was it real? A prank? A setup? But then she remembered the army recruiter's smirk, the school counselor's sigh, the dozens of employers who told her she wasn't the right fit. And she thought, what if the system that rejected me is finally calling back? So she showed up, and the door opened. Not to a job, not to a scholarship. To something bigger. Something off the books. Something that didn't ask who she was, but only what she could do. The man who had slipped Maria the envelope never returned to the library. She looked for him every day for a week, checked the steps, the stacks. The back computer rose. Nothing. His voice echoed in her head. Consider this, a door. And she'd stepped through it. The location inside the envelope had led her to an unmarked office in a crumbling building just outside Ann Arbor. She'd been certain it was a scam, or worse, some kind of trap. But when she walked through the cracked glass doors, someone was already waiting. A tall woman in her early 50s, suit too sharp for the office's broken ceiling tiles, stood beside a computer terminal. She didn't smile. "You're Maria Jennings," the woman said flatly. Maria crossed her arms. "Who's asking?" "We'll ask the questions for now. Sit." The screen flickered on. It showed a simulation, a locked network puzzle, encrypted. 6 ways through layers of dead code. The woman pointed. "Crack it. No tools. Just your mind." Maria's first instinct was to walk. But something told her this wasn't just a test, it was the test. The one she'd unknowingly been preparing. For all her life. The one they wouldn't ask her to do. They didn't already believe she could dot. So she sat dot, and for 20 minutes, the room was dead silent, except for the rhythm of her fingers against the keys. At minute 21, she leaned back. "A ghost key," she said, "hidden in the checksum. You wanted to see if I'd brute force it. I didn't." The woman turned to her colleague behind the glass and nodded. "We're bringing her in." Maria blinked. "Bringing me into what?" The woman smiled for the first time. "To the place where people like you belong." What followed wasn't a government job. It wasn't even exactly legal. Maria was quietly moved into an underground training facility on a former military site outside D.C. No signs, number records, no clear agency name. There were no uniforms, no official titles. Just mines. Exceptional ones. Her classmates included MIT dropouts, foreign defectors, even a blind coder from Tel Aviv who claimed to have once shut down an airport just to prove a point. But even among this quiet storm of genius, Maria stood out. She wasn't fast, she was precise. She didn't memorize, she understood. They gave her no last name, just a call sign. Hilo. It was meant to be ironic based on her first mock scenario, where she crashed a surveillance drone into a digital heaven construct to mask her team's exit. The name stuck, and in time, it began to mean something. Else. In classrooms built like war rooms, Maria outwitted every AI threat simulation. She didn't just think like a hacker. She thought like a survivor. Someone who'd never had the luxury of limits. When the others played defense, Maria attacked. When they used code to protect data, she used it to rewrite the rules of the game itself. And still, she stayed invisible. That was her strength. During training, she kept to herself, slept less than everyone else, and never told anyone about her past. Not about the shelters, not about her mother, not about Mr. Stein, or the first notebook, or the dark nights where she felt like dying. Her pain had no place here. Only her skill did. But one person noticed. An older analyst named Rivers. Gray hair, cold eyes. He never spoke unless necessary. But one night, after a session, he leaned over and whispered, "I've worked with prodigies, foreign agents, and war criminals. You're none of them. You're something new. Something they don't understand yet." Maria didn't know whether to feel proud or afraid. And when she asked Rivers why he picked her file from the millions of lost kids on the internet, he gave her a simple answer. Because you solved something you weren't supposed to even see. The world still didn't know her name. But deep in a forgotten bunker, behind layers of redacted files and iron doors, Maria Jennings was quietly becoming the one thing the system had never prepared for. An outsider. A ghost. A weapon. Asterisk. Maria Jennings disappeared from every public record at age 19. No arrest, no death certificate, no relocation notice. One day, she just vanished. In her place, Agent Halo was born. She was given no badge, no formal authority, and no country to claim her. She didn't serve under a flag, she operated beneath it. Technically, she was freelance intelligence, deployed through a privately contracted Black Ops division so secretive even Congress couldn't audit it. Her missions came as code, strange symbols in encrypted inboxes, flash drives slipped under coffee cups, briefings handed to her in gas stations or laundromats. No names, no paper trail. Only targets. Her first assignment was supposed to be minor. Reach the communications tower of a known ransomware collective operating out of Estonia. Extract data. Leave with the scene. She finished it in 83 minutes. Her handlers were summoned, not because she succeeded, but because she did it without fire, shot, or call as a single operative. Maria didn't fight like the others. Didn't need backup or guns or no tools. She did infrastructure the way water slips through cracks. While her team waited for access codes, Maria was already inside, reading network protocol and reading the enemies. Next move. They didn't even realize they'd been until 3 days later, when the Empire Tower, their leader's hard drive began broadcasting their identities to control. Tonight, they had Hello for the first time in an. Who is Hello? 1, 2, 3. The ghost is real, not the blood. She doesn't leave fingerprints, just silence. Maria watched those eyes with no expression. She didn't care about fear. She cared about impact. By her third mission, she was tasked with leading a digital counterattack against a rogue military faction who had seized control of a dam's power grid in Turkey. With just a laptop and a scrambled satellite uplink, she simulated a fault line under their control servers, tricking the system into believing it was about to collapse. The faction evacuated. No casualties, no fight. Just shadows and strategy. Her colleagues, most of them veterans of traditional warfare, didn't know what to make of her. She wasn't one of them. She didn't wear combat boots. She didn't talk about loyalty or legacy. She didn't brag. She listened. She calculated. She vanished. And when she spoke, it was only when necessary. One teammate, a seasoned field agent named Morales, once said, "She doesn't walk into a room. She phases in." But Maria knew better. She wasn't magic. She was math. She was hunger, memory, precision, and every mission was still personal. Each time she dismantled a network used to traffic children, she thought of the nights she slept 3 doors down from screaming girls in shelters. Each time she took down a corrupt exec stealing from poor families, she remembered the mold on the walls of her old apartment, the way her mom cried during withdrawal. Every firewall she broke, every secret she leaked, every system she crashed, it was a step toward something bigger. Not justice. Not revenge. Control. Maria had never had it. Not as a kid. Not in school. Not in the system. But now she was the system. And it terrified people. She'd gone from invisible to undeniable. Nations wanted her on retainer. Intelligence directors argued over who got to use her next. Some even whispered that she was too dangerous to be alive. And still, no one really knew her. Not her real name. Not her past. Only the ghost code they called Halo. But someone else was watching. Someone from the other side. Not a government. Not a gang. But something bigger. Older. Quieter. And for the first time, Maria wouldn't be the one hunting. She would be the one being hunted. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of silence. Maria Halo was in Prague, wrapping up a minor intercept mission on a known spyware firm laundering money through shell corporations. She had breached their firewall in under 5 hours and already uploaded a virus that would trail their finances back to 3 unnamed senators. In a luxury tower in Singapore. Everything had gone perfectly. Until her burner phone went dead. No signal. No service. Just static. Maria didn't panic. Her mind didn't work like that. But her fingers froze as she noticed something odd on her screen. A line of code she didn't write. A single character tucked into the end of the logic tree. Not malicious. Not functional. Just there. She expanded the line and ran a trace, but it led nowhere like chasing a reflection in broken glass. It was written in a style she recognized. Clean, elegant, almost artistic dot. It wasn't random dot. It was a signature. And it was one she hadn't seen in over 4 years. Not since the anonymous message boards where she first earned her place. Not since the puzzles, the riddles, the challenges. Back then, she'd admired the user who called themselves Helix. They'd been the reason she pushed herself to crack codes no one else could solve. The reason she had believed there were minds like hers out there. But Helix had vanished. Long ago dot, or so she thought dot now. Suddenly, he was back in her code. In her system. Inside her work dot. Maria isolated the line, copied it to an offline drive, and destroyed the rest. The entire Prague network had been compromised quietly, surgically, without a trace. The kind of breach that didn't steal or destroy, but watched. Waited dot. This wasn't an attack. It was a message, and Maria understood it. She rushed to the nearest extraction safe house, only to find the doors already open. Her handler was gone. No sign of struggle. Just an old analog laptop on the table with one file loaded. Open me, halo.her. Pulse stayed steady, but her hand tensed slightly as she clicked the file. The screen turned black, then filled with code not destructive, not viral. Just elegant logic chains, complex mathematical riddles she hadn't seen since her teens. Then a phrase appeared. You're not the only ghost. She didn't respond. Instead, she tore the laptop apart in seconds, pulled the hard drive, and melted the internal circuits with a field burner. Then she vanished, no trace, no signal, not even a shadow in the surveillance grid. Back in D.C., she surfaced briefly to confront her only trusted contact, Analyst Rivers. You knew, she said, eyes like stone. Rivers sighed. I suspected. Let me walk into a code trap. You weren't supposed to trigger it. No one was. Maria threw a folder onto the table, printouts of the Helix signature embedded across 3 recent ops. He's been following my missions, watching them, altering them. Rivers looked at the code, face pale. Then this isn't just digital. It's personal. Maria's jaw clenched. It always was. In the weeks that followed, Maria worked off-grid. She burned every device, changed her identity a dozen times, and hunted for patterns in the digital ether. She traced Helix to ghost forms buried in the darknet, caught echoes of his name on rogue AI simulators, found fragments of his code embedded in missile launch overrides, financial systems, even a humanitarian aid network in Sudan. He wasn't hacking anymore. He was building something, a system of influence, a shadow empire, one that watched without being seen, one where digital borders didn't exist and morality didn't apply. And somehow he had anticipated her. One night, she opened a dummy server she'd seeded with fake data just to lure him in. Instead, a live video feed opened. No audio, just a figure in a mask. He held up a whiteboard. It read, I gave you the code. Halo. Now let's see if you deserve it. Then the feed went dead. For the first time in years, Maria didn't feel in control. She wasn't chasing a criminal. She was being tested by the only person who ever saw her. As an equal, or maybe something more dangerous, not an enemy, but a mirror. Maria was used to control. She didn't just predict outcomes, she shaped them, changed them, owned them. But Helix had turned the game sideways. He wasn't chasing her. He was inviting her. And for someone like Maria, that was worse. Because deep down, she wanted to answer. She told no one, not Rivers, not her contacts in Geneva, not even her old burner network in Iceland. She'd gone completely dark. No aliases, no relays. Just the original her. A girl in a borrowed hoodie, sitting in the corner of a grimy Berlin cafe, face hidden behind a chipped laptop, with nothing but raw code on the screen. This was how she used to lie, scraping for Wi-Fi, hiding in plain sight, chasing the feeling of being seen by someone just as sharp. And now Helix was back, dangling that old hunger in front of her again. Except this time, he wasn't sending riddles or challenges. He was breaking things. 3 humanitarian aid. Servers collapsed overnight. Not deleted, rewritten. Their entire databases replaced by fictional identities. Every person who once relied on their help now didn't exist. Then came the banking alerts. 5 nations had micro-glitches in their financial timekeeping algorithms. None damaging, but all precisely calibrated to hint at a greater breach. And in each one, Maria found traces of a specific pattern. A looping code string she hadn't used in years. Helix was mimicking her, not just imitating, using her old methods. The kind of techniques she buried deep when she became Halo. Things she never told anyone about. Things she had only ever used during her first true hacks. That's when it hit her. This wasn't someone who studied her. This was someone who knew her from before. Before Halo. Before Stein. Before the agency. She tore through every log from her. Old digital life. Hunting usernames, timestamps, long-lost IRC chats. And finally, she found it. An archived chatroom thread from over 7 years ago. Long deleted. Buried beneath 4 proxy layers. But still there, like a shadow behind glass. Her username back then had been nullhalo_13. And buried in the thread. One reply. From user. H3Lixo. You see the angles others miss. You bend light like mirrors bend truth. One day, I'll find you. She had dismissed it at the time. Just more anonymous flattery in a space full of inflated egos. But now, it felt like a warning. Maria began to map the timeline. 7 years ago, Helix disappears after a final string of government leaks. 5 years ago, her own rise begins. Now, he's copying her attacks, watching her missions, twisting her influence. This wasn't just rivalry. It was something deeper. It was obsession. And still, she had no face. No voice. Only a presence like a ghost who had lived in her shadow long before she stepped into the light. So she crafted a plan. She wouldn't run. Wouldn't chase. She would draw him in. She set up a false breach, an accidental leak of her alias from a past op in Jakarta. Left it like bait in a secure node she knew Helix had once tapped. Then she waited. It didn't take long. The server lit up at 3:17 a.m. Maria watched in silence as Helix sliced through her fake encryption like butter. He was fast. Too fast. And then he stopped. A single file blinked to life. One message. Nice trap, Halo, but you're still 2 moves behind. Her eyes narrowed. She had triggered 0 alerts. That meant Helix hadn't just entered the trap. He'd rewritten it while inside. He'd known it was bait. And he'd turned it into a message. Maria's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, she typed, "Tell me what you want." The reply came instantly. "I want you to remember who you were before they caged you." She stared at the screen. For the first time in years, she felt something new. Not fear. Recognition. The message haunted her. "I want you to remember who you were before they caged you." Maria didn't sleep for 2 days after that. She kept going over the phrase in her mind. Not just the words, but the precision. The timing. The way it struck. Exactly where she had walled herself off. No one should have known what the program did to her. The reconditioning. The psychological profiling. The subtle manipulations designed to shape her into a perfect tool of silence. But Helix knew. Not just generally. Intimately. She returned to the East Coast, covertly activating a Level 7 classified clearance, buried under an alias long since erased, Project Grail. It had been the beginning of her transformation into Halo. Only a handful of people had ever known it existed. And she knew exactly where the records were hidden. Deep under Arlington, Virginia, in a black vault not even the NSA could fully access. She broke in like a ghost. Not a single alarm sounded. The cameras blinked off for exactly 12 seconds. And when they turned back on, Maria was gone, and so was one file. Subject 13. Jennings. She read it in a deserted hotel hours later, hands trembling. Every detail of her life was in it. Her mother's death, her foster homes, her juvenile records, her test scores, her aptitude for logical compression, pattern prediction, and emotional compartmentalization. But one section froze her cold. Mentor, redacted. Alias H3LixO-O. Role, initial contact, neural. Modeling prototype. Observed subject during digital adolescence. Provided stimuli. Recommended induction. Maria felt her stomach twist. Helix wasn't a rival. He was part of the machine that made her. He had found her when she was just a teenage girl hacking school databases and shelter networks. He didn't just watch, he designed her path, carefully, patiently, like crafting a ghost out of broken glass and raw fire. She wasn't just the system's weapon. She was his prototype. The rage that came wasn't explosive. It was quiet, cold, focused. She tracked the final clue, buried in the metadata of Helix's last message. A simple cipher. One phrase repeated in various languages, hidden across multiple forum IDs and timestamps. Are you free now? It led her to New Mexico, an abandoned mining town wiped off the map in the 1970s. The kind of place you didn't find unless you were meant to. Maria arrived just before dawn. No satellite could have followed her. No drone could track her steps. She used analog gear. Blacklight ink. Her body moved like a shadow peeled from the wall. At the center of the ghost town was an old church, collapsed from time and heat. Inside, a chair, a table, a single laptop. No guards, no snipers, no wires. Just one open file. Maria sat, opened the device, and read. It wasn't code. It was a confession. Helix told her everything. How he'd found her during a predictive surveillance program run by a rogue defense contractor. How he'd altered her digital records to steer attention her way. How he'd planted opportunities, vulnerabilities for her to exploit, elevate her profile, and funnel her into the Grail Initiative. He said he watched because he believed in her, because she was the one person he couldn't predict. But then, the system tried to erase that unpredictability, tried to mold her into a blade instead of a mind. That's when he walked away and started building his own system, one without masters. A decentralized information structure that would burn every lie governments ever buried. But it needed one thing to work. On her. Maria slammed the laptop shut. No message. No face. No confrontation. Helix had made his move. He wanted her to remember what it was like before she was. Halo. Not to break her, to reclaim her. But Maria wasn't that girl anymore. She had become more than a system, more than a ghost, more than a weapon. She had become a question no one could answer. And now, she had one mission left. Find Helix. End the shadow. Decide who she really is, Halo, or Maria. Asterisk. The rain fell in waves as she stood at the edge of the abandoned observatory. High in the Colorado Rockies. The wind howled through rusted satellite dishes and shattered dome windows. The place had once mapped stars. Now it mapped ghosts. Maria Halo watched the flickering monitors inside. Old analog CRTs lit the shadows with code, surveillance feeds, and one central screen waiting for input. She wasn't surprised he chose this place. Helix loved symbols. The observatory had once searched the universe for intelligence beyond Earth. Now it had found its answer in two fractured human minds, hers and his. She stepped inside, gun holstered, jacket soaked, eyes locked forward. No one stopped her. No alarms. No traps. Just the hum of dying machines and the low pulse of a single active server. A figure stepped into view. Medium height, hooded, gloved hands, masked face. 7 years? He said. Maria didn't flinch. You built this whole theater just to talk? Helix nodded slowly. No, I built this to show you what they took from you. He gestured toward a wall of screen scenes from her life. Her first hack, her failed foster interviews, her training simulations, her missions across Eastern Europe, South Asia, Africa. Every step she took, every time they pushed her. They didn't recruit you, Maria, Helix said softly. They manufactured you. They took your fire and turned it into a leash. Maria's voice was calm. And what did you do? Watch. Feed me scripts and weaknesses so I could prove your theories? Helix stepped closer. I saw what you were before they gave you a number, before they made you Halo. I tried to free you. No, she said, eyes narrowing. You tried to own. The room fell silent. Then Helix spoke again, slower now. That's why I disappeared. Because I couldn't stop trying to shape you. And you needed to break free on your own. He pulled something from his coat. A small black drive. This is the source code to everything I've built. The entire network. You can delete it, broadcast it, bury it. I've wired it to a dead man's switch. Once you make your choice, there's no going back. Maria stared at the drive. The weight of it wasn't in its size, but in what it represented. Truth, anarchy, revolution, closure. He placed it on the table between them. Why now? She asked. Because I finally understand something, Helix said. You don't need to remember who you were. You need to decide who you want to be. For a long moment, Maria said nothing. Then, quietly, she sat. She stared at the drive. At him. I should hate you, she said. You probably do, he replied. But I also understand you. He looked up. She met his eyes. That's the problem. With ghosts. We know each other too well. She reached forward. And took the drive. Helix didn't move. Maria stood slowly. Walked to the server. Plugged in the drive. One by one, the screens went dark. She didn't broadcast it. Didn't destroy it. She absorbed it. Encrypted it into her own systems. Helix watched silently. You're not going to use it? He asked. Maria turned to him. Not yet. He blinked. Then, what now? She walked past him, whispering as she passed. I decide when the next chapter begins. Not you, not them, me. 3 weeks later, in a quiet apartment in Lisbon, a new identity logged into a secure server. Not Halo, not null halo, _13, just m.she. Uploaded a silent kill switch into the digital underworld, a cipher that could wipe the remnants of Helix's network with a keystroke. Then she leaned back, closed her laptop, and exhaled. For the first time, Maria wasn't running from her past. She owned it. They had called her Halo. Now she called herself whatever the hell she wanted. And the world? It would learn her name soon enough.